The Caribbean has long been a hotspot for tensions between the U.S. and Venezuela, with military standoffs and oil disputes heating the region. U.S. Navy patrols frequently face provocations from Venezuela, while Venezuela bolsters its air force to assert control. In 2025, a reckless flyby by Venezuelan F-16 jets near a U.S. Navy ship ignited a ferocious conflict, triggering a cascade of events that shook the region. Below is the account of this confrontation, from a daring aerial act to an outcome that stunned the world. On a stormy night in 2025, the Caribbean waters near Venezuela's coast churned with danger. Two Venezuelan F-16 jets, armed with air-to-ship missiles, swooped low, just hundreds of meters from the USS Farragut, a U.S. destroyer on routine patrol monitoring oil transport routes. The Venezuelan pilots broadcast warnings, demanding the Farragut leave what Caracas claimed as their airspace. The U.S. ship held its course, radar sweeping relentlessly, the atmosphere electric. Suddenly, an F-16 dove at breakneck speed, nearly grazing the ship's deck, rattling the vessel and sparking panic. A warning missile from the F-16 skimmed past, exploding on the sea's surface, sending a towering geyser skyward. Alarms screamed, searchlights pierced the darkness, and the Caribbean became a powder keg ready to erupt. The flyby sparked an immediate response. The USS Farragut activated its air defenses, shooting down a Venezuelan surveillance drone tracking the ship. U.S. F-35 jets from Puerto Rico scrambled, engaging the F-16s in a brutal dogfight over the Caribbean sky. Air-to-air missiles streaked through the night. One F-16 shot down, crashing into the sea in a blazing fireball. Venezuelan warships emerged from the horizon, firing flares and water cannons to intimidate the Farragut. The U.S. deployed attack submarines, launching torpedoes that rocked a Venezuelan ship. Black smoke and flames spread, relentless explosions churning the waters, transforming the region into a chaotic battlefield where every second teetered on disaster. The conflict surged into the electronic realm with lightning speed. Venezuelan electronic warfare units deployed jammers, paralyzing the Farragut's radar and communications. The U.S. retaliated with a massive electronic assault, disabling Venezuela's air control systems in Caracas. U.S. satellite jamming signals scrambled the F-16 fleet, causing some jets to lose navigation and crash into the sea. Meanwhile, U.S. hackers breached Venezuela's military networks, seizing control of coastal missile launchers. In the skies, combat drones from both sides clashed in fiery storms, explosions lighting up the night. The Farragut's laser defense system intercepted most Venezuelan missiles, but debris rained down like a meteor shower, igniting fires across the sea. The war turned the Caribbean into a multi-layered flashpoint, where technology and firepower merged in chaos. The conflict erupted when Venezuela, backed by regional allies, launched ballistic missiles at U.S. bases in Colombia and Puerto Rico. The U.S. responded with a lightning strike, using B-21 stealth bombers to demolish Venezuelan military airfields near Caracas. Flames and smoke billowed from the flattened bases, sparking panic across the region. Other Caribbean nations were drawn to the brink, with Colombian and Brazilian warships joining patrols to contain the spread. The regional economy reeled as oil transport routes stalled, tankers trapped in the war zone. Satellite imagery revealed massive fires and black smoke clouds, marking an unprecedented phase of warfare in the Caribbean. The conflict's fallout triggered a Caribbean regional crisis. Disrupted oil routes sent global energy prices soaring, causing fuel shortages in the Americas and Europe. Neighboring nations held emergency summits to halt escalation, deploying relief teams to aid affected cities. Autonomous robots cleaned up debris and oil spills at sea, while international special forces hunted insurgent groups exploiting the chaos to rise. The U.S. and Venezuela, facing economic and international pressure, negotiated a sudden ceasefire. But the Caribbean waters remained littered with wreckage, and regional criminal groups emerged from the turmoil. The crisis temporarily curbed the war, but new tensions and persistent threats signaled an unstable future. Tensions between Russia and the U.S. have simmered through years of aerial confrontations, from intercepts in Syria to dangerous encounters over the Black Sea.
U.S. patrols near Russia's borders often spark disputes, while Russia responds with bold tactics, like deploying drones and fighters in close proximity. A collision between a Russian drone and a U.S. F-35 over the Baltic skies in 2025 pushed tensions to a breaking point, triggering a chain of events that rocked the world. Below is the account of this conflict, from an aerial mishap to its unforeseen global consequences.
On a frigid morning in 2025, over the Baltic skies near Russia's border, a U.S. F-35, equipped with stealth technology and advanced radar, conducted a NATO patrol mission. A Russian military drone, deployed from Kaliningrad, suddenly approached, broadcasting warnings demanding the U.S. jet leave what Russia claimed as sensitive airspace. The F-35 pilot held course, radar locked on target, the atmosphere taut. Abruptly, the Russian drone accelerated and collided with the F-35's wing, damaging an engine and briefly sending the jet into a spin. The pilot activated emergency systems, but the Baltic skies became a flashpoint, poised to erupt.
The collision sparked an immediate response. Russian Su-57 fighters scrambled from a nearby base, while the U.S. deployed additional F-35s from a carrier in the Baltic Sea. NATO air defenses along Poland and Lithuania lit up with alerts as Russian sonar and radar jamming disrupted the F-35's communications. A dogfight erupted, with air-to-air missiles streaking across the sky. The F-35's defense systems downed several Russian drones, but debris rained down, igniting fires on the sea below. The confrontation turned the Baltic skies into a blazing battlefield, with black smoke and explosions spreading wide.
The conflict spilled into cyberspace and outer space. Viruses targeted the F-35's control systems, disrupting links to NATO bases. The U.S. countered by crippling radar at Russian bases in Kaliningrad. In space, Russian and U.S. military satellites clashed in digital attacks, disrupting global positioning systems. Fighters from both sides battled over the Baltic, with hypersonic missiles slicing through clouds. NATO's advanced air defenses intercepted most Russian missiles, but debris from the explosions shook the ground below. The war expanded as NATO allies joined, turning the Baltic into a multinational hotspot, where the sky burned with smoke and fire.
The conflict escalated beyond control when Russia destroyed a U.S. reconnaissance satellite with an anti-satellite missile. The U.S. retaliated by neutralizing 3 Russian space control stations in Siberia using directed energy weapons launched from orbit. These strikes disrupted global communication networks, causing panic in financial and military hubs. NATO bases in Europe faced Russian ballistic missile attacks, while the U.S. deployed air forces from Germany and Norway. The global economy reeled as satellite navigation systems failed, paralyzing air and sea transport. Orbital imagery showed debris fields and smoke from destroyed stations, marking an unprecedented phase of warfare.
The aftermath of the space attacks triggered a global energy crisis. Disrupted satellites crippled oil and gas supply networks as maritime routes and pipelines reliant on GPS ground to a halt. Nations dependent on energy scrambled for scarce resources, forging unexpected alliances to restore order. Autonomous robot teams were deployed to clear orbital debris, while relief ships delivered emergency fuel to affected regions. The U.S. and Russia, facing mutual devastation, paused military actions to focus on energy stabilization. Yet the battlefield remained littered with wreckage, with insurgent groups exploiting the chaos to rise. The crisis temporarily curbed the war, but new alliances and lingering energy threats signaled an unstable future. Scarborough Shoal in the South China Sea has long been a flashpoint, where U.S. freedom of navigation operations clash with China's aggressive sovereignty claims. Confrontations involving Chinese warships and aircraft have pushed tensions to the edge. In 2025, a daring Chinese provocation at Scarborough using submarines and attack drones ignited a ferocious conflict with the U.S. Navy, triggering a cascade of events that stunned the world. Below is the account of this confrontation, from a reckless maritime act to a shocking global outcome. On a stormy night in 2025, the waters around Scarborough Shoal churned with danger. A Chinese Type 095 stealth submarine carrying underwater drones surfaced abruptly near the USS Preble, a U.S. destroyer conducting a freedom of navigation patrol. The submarine broadcast warnings, demanding the U.S. ship leave what China claimed as territorial waters. The USS Preble held its course, radar sweeping relentlessly, the atmosphere electric. Suddenly, a Chinese underwater drone surged forward, colliding with the Preble's hull, shaking the deck and causing minor damage. Alarms screamed, searchlights pierced the pitch-black sea, and Scarborough became a tinderbox ready to explode. The collision ignited an immediate response. The Chinese submarine unleashed a swarm of attack drones, targeting the USS Preble's sonar systems and disrupting its navigation. The U.S. Navy countered, deploying anti-submarine helicopters from the ship that obliterated the drones with missiles. A Chinese destroyer emerged from the darkness, firing flares and water cannons, attempting to force the Preble out. The U.S. scrambled F-35 jets from a nearby carrier, and a dogfight erupted over Scarborough's skies. Missiles tore through the air, a Chinese drone exploding above the sea, sending a towering geyser skyward. Black smoke and flames engulfed the area, transforming the waters into a chaotic battlefield where every second teetered on the brink of catastrophe. The conflict surged into cyberspace and outer space with breakneck speed. Chinese hackers attacked the USS Preble's control systems, severing communications with the U.S. fleet. The U.S. retaliated, crippling radar stations on China's artificial islands in the South China Sea. In orbit, Chinese military satellites unleashed jamming signals, disrupting U.S. Navy navigation systems. U.S. satellites struck back, neutralizing a Chinese satellite with an electromagnetic pulse. In the skies, fighters from both sides clashed fiercely, hypersonic missiles lighting up the night. The Preble's Aegis defense system intercepted most incoming fire, but debris rained into the sea like a meteor shower, pushing Scarborough to the edge of all-out war.
The conflict erupted when China launched ballistic missiles from the mainland, targeting U.S. naval bases in Guam and the Philippines. The U.S. responded with a lightning strike, using cruise missiles from submarines to demolish Chinese military facilities on Hainan Island. Flames and smoke billowed from the ruined bases, shaking the regional balance of power. China's allies deployed warships to the South China Sea, while NATO mobilized fleets from Japan. Global maritime trade ground to a halt, crippling economies. Satellite imagery revealed massive fires and smoke clouds, marking a brutal, unprecedented phase of warfare.
The fallout from the conflict triggered a global financial collapse. Cyber attacks crashed stock markets in New York, Shanghai, and London as AI viruses paralyzed trading systems. International banks froze assets, sparking worldwide panic. Nations reliant on South China Sea trade scrambled for emergency negotiations to reopen shipping lanes. Autonomous robots were deployed to restore wrecked data centers, while international relief ships delivered goods to affected ports. The U.S. and China, facing catastrophic economic losses, paused military actions to stabilize markets. Yet Scarborough's waters remained littered with wreckage, and cybercriminal networks rose amid the chaos. The crisis temporarily halted the war, but financial instability and emerging threats signaled a turbulent future.
Tensions between the U.S. and Iran have escalated over years of maritime confrontations in the Persian Gulf. U.S. freedom of navigation operations often provoke disputes, while Iran asserts its claims with aggressive maneuvers, like speedboat swarms and missile threats. A secret Iranian invasion fleet at the end of 2024 pushed the region to the brink, triggering a swift U.S. response that altered the global balance.
Below is the account of this conflict from a covert maritime incursion to its fiery oceanic conclusion. On a moonless night in 2025, Iran launched a covert invasion fleet from its ports in the Persian Gulf, aiming to seize key oil platforms near the Strait of Hormuz. The armada included stealth submarines and fast attack boats loaded with missiles, slipping through international waters under radar evasion. Warnings from Iranian vessels to U.S. patrols echoed Tehran's sovereignty claims, but the fleet pressed on, targeting strategic choke points. The atmosphere grew tense as radars detected anomalies, and suddenly, Iranian boats swarmed a U.S. destroyer, forcing evasive actions. The waters around the disputed platforms became a powder keg, ready to ignite.
The invasion fleet's advance triggered U.S. surveillance systems, with satellites and underwater sensors picking up the submarine signatures. Drones deployed from a nearby U.S. carrier scanned the seas, disrupting Iranian communications with sonar pings. Fires erupted on several Iranian vessels as initial clashes unfolded, alarms blaring across the fleet. U.S. ships fired warning shots, but Iran misinterpreted this as aggression, launching anti-ship drones. The American destroyer activated close-range defenses, downing several drones, but remaining missiles rocked the waves. The turbulent seas witnessed continuous explosions, transforming the area into a raging battlefield.
The conflict spread to cyberspace and the air. Viruses targeted Iranian navigation systems, while U.S. countermeasures jammed the fleet's radar. In the skies, fighter jets from a U.S. carrier clashed with Iranian aircraft in intense dogfights. Hypersonic missiles streaked toward the U.S. destroyer, but advanced defenses intercepted most, debris raining into the sea. The battle expanded as Allied forces from a neighboring nation joined with patrol boats, turning the invasion zone into a multinational flashpoint where explosions and black smoke shrouded the sky. The conflict escalated uncontrollably as Iran fired ballistic missiles at U.S. bases in the Gulf. The U.S. retaliated with strikes on Iranian command centers along the coast. Cruise missiles launched from U.S. submarines destroyed these facilities, shaking regional power dynamics. Smoke rose from the ruined sites, causing panic in nearby cities. Iran's allies responded with attacks on U.S. assets in the Middle East, while U.S. carriers deployed defensive formations in the Gulf. Global economies reeled as oil routes halted, and satellite imagery revealed vast areas engulfed in smoke.
The rapid destruction of the invasion fleet triggered unforeseen geopolitical shifts. Radioactive leaks from damaged Iranian submarines contaminated Gulf waters, forcing regional nations to form emergency alliances for cleanup. Autonomous robot teams cleared debris, while international relief ships delivered supplies to affected areas. The U.S. and Iran, facing mutual devastation, halted military actions to focus on recovery. But the battlefield remained littered with wreckage, with insurgent groups exploiting the chaos to rise. The crisis temporarily curbed the war, but new alliances and lingering threats signaled an unstable future.